It's been some time, hasn't it?
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys!
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Marvel's new TV trailer for 2025. This baby is loaded with first looks that we are so excited to talk about. We're going to talk about Daredevil, Ironheart, Wonder Man, Spider-Man, Eyes of Wakanda, Marvel Zombies, and What If. I am so hyped. So hyped! So, the first image of this trailer are the screens of the TVA showing different Marvel shows. Now, in a meta way, this sends the message that we are watching the multiverse saga unfold from the TVA, like we're all monitoring the events of the sacred timeline. It's also a subtle way to connect all of this to Marvel's latest hit, Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, like I said, I am so hyped about all these shows next year, but I am also so hyped about our live show tour. In 2 weeks, we will be in Boston, Massachusetts for our very first show. We're gonna have special guests, tell you what we really think about Marvel and Star Wars and all that stuff, and best of all, we're gonna get to meet you guys face to face. The links to cities and tickets are below, but get yours now because they are selling out fast. So, on this screen, we see Ironheart, Daredevil, and Wonder Man, the 3 live-action shows releasing next year. Then, on the bottom, Kingpin, Spider-Man, Eyes of Wakanda, Wonder Man, Kingpin again, Muse, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Kingpin again. And don't worry, I'm going to explain all of these images in depth as we go along. Then, the main image is Matt Murdock's broken glasses, and then Matt's hand reaching for them, as Deadpool says this line, from Deadpool and Wolverine.
It's gonna get good.
So wait, is this gonna be the same Daredevil from those Netflix shows?
Kind of, yes and no. So the new Daredevil show has like a lot of the same cast members from the Netflix show. And as we'll talk about later, certain elements from that show are carrying over, but they're not necessarily going to be bogged down by the entire continuity of what happened in those series. You see, Daredevil and those other Marvel Netflix shows were like their own little self-contained Marvel universe, created by a different branch of Marvel called Marvel Television, and Kevin Feige had nothing to do with the creation of those shows. But when Marvel's deal with Netflix lapsed, the MCU decided to formally bring Daredevil into the MCU in Spider-Man No Way Home and She-Hulk. Now, originally, this show wasn't going to have so many cast members return, but during the 2023 Hollywood strikes, they retooled, and now it is essentially a new season of the Netflix series. And then we get a shot from Ironheart. Now, this shows Riri Williams and Alden Ehrenreich's character, Joe McGillicuddy, unveiling her new Ironheart armor.
You lost me.
Okay, so here's a little TLDR on Ironheart's history in the comics and the MCU. In the comics, Riri Williams grew up on the south side of Chicago, where her dad and best friend were killed in a drive-by shooting. She has a hyper-genius level intellect, and she got into MIT when she was just 15 years old. And then she was kicked out of MIT for scavenging parts to build her own Iron Man suit. So all of this caught the attention of Tony Stark, and he began to mentor her. Long story short, Tony actually died in the comics around this time, but his consciousness was put into an AI hologram that guided Riri as she became a new hero called Ironheart. In the MCU, it's a very similar story. Riri is an MIT student who invents a vibranium detector, an action that kicked off a war between Wakanda and Talokan. So in Wakanda Forever, she has built her own scavenged Iron Man suit, but then she makes a streamlined version with Shuri, who then tells her,
"It's a great design, but can't let you leave with it."
And this was essentially to reset her story for the show Ironheart, so she'd have to rebuild her armor in the show. Then we see a brief flash of Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. So I'm gonna give you the whole TLDR on his story from the comics. So later on, then we can talk about how it's different in the MCU. So in the comics, Simon Williams was a businessman who was driven out of business by Stark Industries. So then Baron Zemo experimented on him and gave him superpowers. He starts off fighting the Avengers, but then sacrifices his life to save them. But the ionic energy inside of Simon means that not only is he strong and invulnerable, but essentially he is impossible to kill. He comes back, joins the Avengers, and even becomes a founding member of the West Coast Avengers. Wonder Man comics are a lot of fun. He's actually one of my favorite Avengers. He's an actor who's trying to make it in Hollywood. In fact, his greatest antagonist in this comic is oftentimes his agent. And even though he's super invulnerable, he doesn't just want to play action roles. He wants to be a serious actor. And I like that in this shot, he's wearing red sunglasses, like the ones he wears in the comics to hide his glowing red eyes. And then we see a brief flash of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So this show was originally called Spider-Man Freshman Year, which made us all assume that it was going to be about Tom Holland's first year as Spider-Man. But then they released concept art that showed him fighting Spider-Man villains, and it was revealed that this was instead a multiversal show that is still giving us a very grounded look at a very young Spider-Man, but it's technically not in the 616 MCU. And by the way, they can make this show separate from Sony because Marvel's contract with Sony technically says that Marvel Marvel can make Spider-Man TV shows if the episodes are under 30 minutes each. Then we get this shot of Ironheart that mimics Tony's first flight in Iron Man. And then we see this old man looking at pinned photos on his wall. Now, this might have confused some of you, like you're thinking, is this a professor or something? Like, notice how, like, this is a drawing of a Chitauri from the Avengers. But also, this egg up here is from the poster of the movie Alien. So I think that what we're seeing here is movie concept art, and this is probably a producer. This guy's probably talking to Simon Williams about the movie Wonder Man that they are planning to film. And then we see Kingpin and Vanessa at dinner. And behind them, we can see A Rabbit in a Snowstorm, the painting with blood splattered on it from the finale of Daredevil Season 3. So this is one of the most exciting things about the MCU incorporating the Netflix shows. Vincent D'Onofrio added layers to the Kingpin that really don't exist in the comics. He has consistently handed in one of the all-time best Marvel villain performances, and I am so pumped to see his character fit into the MCU. And then we see Anthony Ramos' character from Ironheart, the Hood. In the comics, the Hood was a two-bit crook who killed a demon, long story short, and then he stole his boots and hood. So this gave him supernatural powers, but this also connected him to the show's other villain, Mephisto, played by Sacha Baron Cohen.
For real this time?
Yes, for real. Mephisto was name-dropped in Agatha all along.
Others say he might be a demon or an agent of Mephisto.
But he is actually in this show on screen. Now, in the show, the Hood is apparently friends with Riri, but four of them take very different paths. However, there is a shot of Riri later in the trailer where she is being showered with money as these flames flare up behind her. So I think this image is going to be Mephisto tempting Riri with money and stability, which she never had growing up on Chicago's South Side. And then we get the first teaser for Daredevil Born Again. Now notice how the city is at the bottom of the logo. This is a fun way to show us that the show is going to be about the seedy underbelly of the MCU that they never show in the movies. And then we see Daredevil's suit, and man, does it look awesome. So in the show She-Hulk, we saw a throwback to his original yellow suit from the comics, leading some fans to fear that the Disney Plus show would be too lighthearted, similar to when Matt moved to San Francisco in the comics and actually lived a happy life.
Happy never.
But now, he's back to the classic dark red armor from the Netflix series. I actually think this armor looks better than what we saw in the Netflix series. It's like what we saw on the show Echo. Oh, I'm so pumped about it. So in this show, Fisk is running for mayor, like he does in the comics. Now, over the course of 3 seasons of Daredevil and the show Hawkeye and the show Echo, we have seen Wilson Fisk be a crime boss and go to jail. But then the show Echo ended with him getting the idea to run for mayor. This would finally give him true power over his enemy Daredevil. Early reports have hinted that he is running on an anti-vigilante platform. So maybe this means that the Born Again show could have something in common with the comic book Daredevil Born Again.
So what's that comic book?
So Born Again is one of the greatest Daredevil stories ever written. Created by Frank Miller, it is when Kingpin learns Matt's secret identity and has him disbarred and blows up his house. Matt spends the entire event out of costume and fighting his way back from oblivion. Now, this was loosely adapted in Daredevil Season 3, but elements of it could appear here. So the two of them meet at a diner, and we hear,
You've come up in the world.
I could say the same about you.
Now, there's a lot of meta lines in this trailer, and I think that this line is indicating that the two of them have moved up in the world because they have finally joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe proper.
Welcome to the MCU, by the way. You're joining at a bit of a low point.
Notice that Kingpin is now wearing an American flag pin because he is a politician. And then we see him and Vanessa at a gala wearing red and white. So this calls back to the last time we saw them together in Daredevil Season 3, when Matt beat the Kingpin senseless, splashing blood on his white suit and on the painting Rabbit in a Snowstorm. If you've seen the show, then you know that has some deeper symbolism that goes back to Wilson's childhood that we're not going to go into here. We also find out that Kingpin knows Matt is Daredevil, confirming that they are continuing the story from the Netflix show. And this is as we see Matt opening a case that contains his billy clubs. And man, oh god, this is so good. We see a flash of him fighting Bullseye. So in the comics, Bullseye is Daredevil's #1 foe after Kingpin. He can essentially turn anything into a weapon, and he's one of those dark mirror villains because his skills are so similar to Daredevil's. In Season 3 of the Netflix show, he is introduced as a mentally disturbed FBI agent named Benjamin Poindexter, who slowly falls under the sway of Kingpin. And then we see him fighting Muse, one of Daredevil's most terrifying villains from a recent run of the comics. Now, Muse should be like a TVMA villain. In the comics, he was introduced painting a mural with the blood of over 100 people. And here, notice these paint cans in the background. Muse is an unusual villain because he considers himself an artist first. And it's ironic that Daredevil cannot see his enemy's artwork, so he has to literally sniff him out. Look, I'm not going to give away anything else, but buckle up for one scary-ass story if they do Muse right. And then we get a fun Marvel crossover. That's Yusuf Khan, Kamala Khan's dad from Ms. Marvel. And this line,
What kind of a lawyer are you?
A really good one.
is a callback to Matt's first scene in the MCU proper.
I'm a really good lawyer.
And by the way, guys, thank you for watching all of our Marvel coverage over the years. We are so pumped for 2025, and thank you for supporting our channel by shopping our merch store. Right now, we have merch for Agatha All Along that's actually going to be leaving the store soon. So if you want to get your Bees Tarot card shirt, you got to log on soon because in a few days, they are going to be gone forever. And we also have this My Little Symbiote shirt showing the Venom horse as the pony Rainbow Sparkle. Guys, we love designing merch for you. We have all this different Marvel parody merch. You can find links for them below. And then we get a very short clip of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man showing Peter in his homemade suit. So a couple of small details here. Notice he's wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt with a jersey over top. Very similar to Peter 1's first costume that we saw in Civil War and in Homecoming. But he stores his web fluid in his JanSport backpack, and the web shooters are on the outside of his wrists. And this is similar to the Spider-Man TV show in the 1970s. If you haven't seen it, you're better off. And then in Ironheart's segment, we see Riri back at MIT after the Wakandans cleared her name with the FBI. Now she's constructing sleek new Ironheart armor that she's able to summon to her, similar to Tony Stark's Mark 42 armor from Iron Man 3. Now notice how her suit though is more bulky, but I love the detail here that we can see her hand inside of the wrist. It's very similar to how when Tony first built his Mark II armor, he started off by designing the gauntlets and hands. The armor also makes the same sound effects as Iron Man's armor. But the helmet is of course different. So I like this helmet because it looks more like a knight's armor, you know, with this black divider in the center. This is kind of appropriate because the original Avengers fit certain archetypes: the soldier, the monster, the god, the spy, and the knight, like Iron Man. So this shot of her punching a truck is of course similar to this shot from The Dark Knight, but it's also similar to Obadiah Stane hitting a car in Iron Man 1. So I think this isn't just an Easter egg. I think this is indicating that Riri has a dark side and will be tempted to walk a darker path, like Obadiah Stane's. So this goes back to the shot of Mephisto tempting her, like I mentioned earlier. And then we get a few shots of What If Season 3. Nick Fury getting beamed down with some soldiers.
And this could be from the episode What If Secret Invasion didn't suck?
Doug, be nice.
I'm sorry.
And then we see Shang-Chi as a cowboy. All right, so two things here. One, I'm glad we're finally getting to see Shang-Chi return. And two, I really hope this means they're doing a Western episode similar to the great 1602 episode last season. And then we see what looks like an alliance of Asgardians and Dark Elves attacking like an Ironheart armor with a Captain America shield. The big reveal here is that What If Season 3 is debuting on December 22nd. And I'm betting that Marvel's going to repeat that incredibly stupid release schedule where they dropped a single episode a day and the whole thing was done in a week. Makes it really hard to cover the show because you know what, Kevin? Some of us have families. And then we see clips from the most anticipated animated show, Marvel Zombies. So Marvel Zombies started off as an alternate universe that the Fantastic Four discovered in the Ultimate Fantastic Four comics. But then Marvel Zombies really took off and became its own brand. This series will continue the setup from season 1 of What If, when we saw that zombie Thanos had gathered all the Infinity Stones. Then we see that the Wakandans have all been turned, including Okoye, and they've joined forces with members of Thanos' Black Order. Here we see zombie Proxima Midnight and Call Obsidian. Now the voice here is Alexei, the Red Guardian, and we do see him in the next shot, along with this mysterious new figure who we can't identify. If you know who that is, tell me in the comments. And then we see all the Black Widows united and shooting at zombies, followed by Zombie Cap. This show's going to be great. And then finally, that takes us to Wonder Man. So we begin with a studio bell, as we see Simon Williams coming into an audition, and he is played by the incredible actor Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Now, a few things to note here. He is not a guy with powers who goes by the name Wonder Man. He is apparently just a normal actor auditioning for the role of Wonder Man. So this is setting us up for some very meta Marvel Cinematic Universe jokes. The studio has created a movie about a superhero, and maybe in the show, to make this feel authentic, they are giving the actor actual superpowers. Or maybe the movie is all going to be just a cover for Ed Harris's villain character to do something more nefarious. Either way, this show is doing something different, and I am here for it. His acting coach is Trevor Slattery, who has apparently been pardoned for his crimes after Wenwu broke him out of prison in the Shore, All Hail the King. Now, Trevor Slattery was, of course, the phony Mandarin in Iron Man 3, but the last time we saw him, he was comic relief in the extremely underrated film Shang-Chi.
If they can teach those monkeys to act that brilliantly, just imagine what I could bring to the world.
So after we see him help Simon through his self-tape, he says,
"You better not mess this up." I know.
And I can't help but think that this is Marvel Studios poking fun at themselves, saying don't mess up this show because we really need a win. And then we see a flash of this gorgeous scene from The Eyes of Wakanda, which is apparently painted in the style of shows like Netflix's Arcane. So this show is going to show us the exploits of Wakandan special forces and the Dora Milaje over the centuries, hence the sailing ship that we see in the background here. And then there's a few different flashes. Kingpin saying we have a long road ahead ahead of us, which is true actually. Born Again has already been greenlit for 2 more seasons. And then we see Riri in battered Ironheart armor that frankly, I like a lot more than her shiny suits. And then right here, oh, this is John Barenthal's Frank Castle once again suited up as the Punisher. I cannot wait to see this incredibly dark, violent character cross over with movie characters like Spider-Man, Captain America, and Thor. Marvel, you're back. Give us these crossovers again, please. Well, that's all the Easter eggs we caught, but what shows are you most excited about? Let me know in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel, guys. Please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.